I'm convinced these banks, quote, didn't have to fail. I'm convinced the decision to take them out were political. Another major lawsuit related to government corruption and abuse, and an issue that's shaking our economy is the way the Treasury Department has handled these bank takeovers or bailouts, however you want to call them. And we had asked for records from the key agencies in the Treasury Department about their decision-making and communications on these two big banks that failed, the infamous Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. We filed a Freedom of Information lawsuit for all communications between two components, the Financial Stability Oversight Council and the Office of Financial Research, and all the records concerning the two banks I mentioned, Silicon Valley and Signature. Both banks, as you may know, were forced into failure recently by the Biden administration. That happened back in March. The Biden administration's actions in attempting to resolve the bank failures will cost tens of billions of dollars, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation estimated. Now, that money comes from, in part, the fees you pay as a customer through your bank to the FDIC. So they take that money to cover any losses and subsidies needed to take care of the banks that they've essentially shut down in California and up in New York. I think Signature's up in New York. The Financial Stability Oversight Council was established by Title I of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act and signed into law by President Barack Obama on July 21, 2010. It's tasked with monitoring the stability of the U.S. financial system. And as we uncovered and disclosed with our friend Vern McKinley, who is an expert, and he's a former Judicial Watch client, he's an expert on these financial oversight matters. The Financial Stability Oversight Council is clearly incapable of providing either financial stability or oversight. It should be eliminated. So I have a feeling we're going to find some haplessness in the least here in terms of their management of banking issues and regulatory issues that required government takeovers or bank bailouts. On April 26, House Financial Services Committee Chairman Patrick McHenry, along with Bill Huizenga, who is the subcommittee chairman on the Oversight Committee, and I guess there was another committee chairman, Andy Barr, sent a letter to the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, demanding it provide information previously requested more than a month prior from its meeting immediately following the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. So, this Oversight Council met, and Yellen runs it, I think, as chair, and, they couldn't get records to Congress, and they're ignoring Congress. So it's not just Judicial Watch that's being stonewalled, Congress is being stonewalled as well. Now, the Office of Financial Research was created to promote financial stability by delivering high-quality financial data, standards, and analysis in support, again, of this other agency and other oversight regulatory bodies. Now, in its 2022 report to Congress, that office stated that it found overall threats to U.S. financial stability were elevated compared to last year. The 2022 report discussed how the systemic risk landscape was elevated as financial institutions face more uncertainty from rising inflation, tight credit conditions, and the geopolitical landscape. So we want to know what else they warned about, either formally or informally, about this bank or these banks failing. I'm convinced these banks, quote, didn't have to fail. I'm convinced the decision to take them out were political. There were issues being faced in California that the Silicon Valley Bank. It doesn't mean, a bank failing doesn't mean everyone involved loses money. It means some people involved lose money. Under our system, if you have accounts that are under $250,000 or so, you're protected. Well, the Biden gang came in and decided to protect people who had accounts in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So that was a bailout, and it was at the behest, I think the reporting shows, by Democrats. So what I think we're going to find in some of these FOIA responses is they didn't know what they were doing. They really weren't monitoring it. They didn't know about it until it became too late. And they didn't decide to do anything, not because they did a coherent economic analysis of the systemic risk of these banks. They don't know what, especially banks of this size, whether they're a systemic risk or not. But there is a systemic risk to the political system if favored political banks, or in the case of Signature Bank, a disfavored bank, are allowed to continue to operate without backup support from the feds. Now, in the case of Signature Bank, if I recall correctly, it was Signature Bank that Barney Frank was associated with, the former Democrat member of Congress who was a big critic of banks. Now he's on the board of banks. And Barney Frank said, you know, this bank probably could have been fine, but the government didn't want them in the business of crypto. So crypto is a disfavored business, so they shut the bank down and used that as an excuse to shut the bank down. So this lawsuit, I think, is going to be very interesting. Massive bank failures induced by the Biden administration have rocked our economic system. The American people deserve to know the details of the costly interventions and government takeovers of Silicon Valley and Signature banks. That Judicial Watch has had to sue for basic information about this banking crisis, it's just two banks, suggests the Biden administration has something to hide, I'd say. So we'll see what happens here. You know, I just love the fact that we spend billions of dollars of your money. So it's not only your money through the banking system, through fees you pay, and then the banks then pay, or pay on your behalf, and you pay for it whether you know it or not. And of course, your tax dollars are always at risk. I mean, when you say you're backing up virtually every deposit in America, right? I mean, that's trillions of dollars in potential liability. And it's little old Judicial Watch who are asking questions about, well, how did this all come about? What's the theory of the case here? And it happened in 2008 during the last crisis. Judicial Watch was doing the basic investigative work. And it shows you how decrepit this city is, that these crises emerge, tax dollars are spent by the tens of billions, risks and liabilities to the American people are increased by the trillions, and it's little old Judicial Watch who's kind of rooting around in court trying to figure out what's happening here. And you know, between the debt fight and the banking crisis, you know, we can talk about the cultural war, right? And the assault on our children and the craziness in our schools, critical race theory, you know, but countries can end when you have incompetent and politicized government bureaucrats and elected officials mishandling and abusing their authorities to ruin our economic system, either through inflation, government-caused and worsened banking crises, and other situations like that. So our country can fall simply on an economic crisis in addition to all the other crises we're facing at the border and culturally. So as I keep on saying, these are dangerous times, and Congress is looking at it a little bit, but dare I say it, not enough, and certainly the media has zero interest in it, despite money by the trillions being put at risk. That's your money and the money of your children and grandchildren and, frankly, their grandchildren. So Judicial Watch is proud to be the only game in town, practically speaking, when it comes to holding the government to account for these crazed bank bailouts that place every dollar in America at risk. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.